Just introduce myself. I'm Mathieu Kervin from the Department of Geography of the VB, and I have been involved in several projects regarding disaster risk management, and we have started to work with citizen science. I will let my two co-speakers introduce themselves. John?
My name is John Sekajugo. I'm a PhD student working on hazard assessment and risk analysis using the systems approach. I'm registered here at VB, but I'm also attached to Mbarara University of Science and Technology in Uganda, plus Mountains of the Moon University in the Rwenzori region. Thank you.
And Dr. Dinh?
Yes. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nguyen Quoc from Vietnam Institute of Geoscience and Mineral Resources. Thanks to the support of RIA UOS, we have the project with Professor Mathieu Kervin, the building capacity for disaster management for the mountainous region in Da Bắc district in Vietnam. So our group is focusing on the disaster risk reduction, and we hope that today we will have a very nice discussion about the topic.
Thank you, Dinh. Indeed, the goal of today's webinar is to give just a brief overview of the project we have been involved in and the approaches of citizen science with the advantage and drawbacks of these methods. And we will be very happy also to discuss that with all of you. So our first academic research is related to risk management. What are risks? These are all these events where natural extremes are being imposed on exposed populations that are vulnerable to these to the impact of these natural hazards. Often we think about these large-scale events like the floods we have just had in Belgium or Germany, or those in China, as Christophe mentioned. But actually, when we look in many countries, especially in the global south, we see that there are also many more events that are small scales, small floods, small landslides, small fires that are maybe not big enough to make it in the news, to have large-scale impact, but they are very frequent. Such as here, the floods in Budibunjo district in western Uganda. They are quite common. They will happen several times a year in different places. And these are the ones that can impose a lot of impact on people. So at the local scales, they can be highly destructive. They can destroy houses. They can force people to be displaced or to have an impact on their livelihoods. But the big problem for us, as we want to document where these things happen, when, how we can protect people, how we can help people to protect themselves, but also what amount of impact is caused by these events, is that we miss a good inventory of what is happening when and what kind of impact. And this was the key reasoning behind the approach of citizen science, as these citizens, they are on the field, they know their environments, and they are the best ones to be able to testify of what's going on a daily basis. If we look at some statistics, we see that the global south is disproportionately impacted by the impact of natural hazards. For the statistics we have, we know that there is at least 5 times more fatalities in low-income countries, that the impact of weather-related disaster is also much larger, especially if we look in relative economic terms than in more developed countries. When we look at the two maps on the left, we see that the risk is typically much larger around the tropics, and especially in Africa and Southeast Asia, we have hotspots for risk. And that's based not only on the fact that we have natural extremes there, but also that we have high concentration of population with a relatively high vulnerability. On the other hand, if we look at the number of disasters that are being reported in a global database, like the UN International Strategy for Disaster Risk Predictions is maintaining, we see that some big countries are reporting a lot, but some others, like many countries in Africa, are not reporting many events. So we know that these many small-scale events, they do have impact, but often they go unreported. And that means we are quite blind related to what is happening, what kind of impact, and how serious that is for the development of these countries. Just to frame our research, you might be aware that there is an international framework which is called the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, which is running from 2015 for 15 years, which has been putting the stress on the fact that we need to build a culture of risk reductions, that everyone from the institution but also from the local communities needs to be aware of the risk and involved in reducing these risks at local level. When we say risk, we always include three components. So the hazards, the events that generate the potential threat, but also the exposure of population, where they live, do they live in zones that are affected, and the vulnerability, how much they can cope. And relative to that, we can also make sure that the populations that are exposed build up some capacities in order to be able to cope with the impact. And so the general goal of everyone involved in contributing to the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction is to lower the risk by acting on these different components of the risk equation. Specifically in our project, we have been interested in areas that are quite remote, that are mountainous, where we do have quite a lot of people living, but in a scattered way across mountainous terrains, living mostly from agricultural activities. So on the one hand, we wanted to have information on what type of hazards and risk is taking place, their temporal and spatial distribution, what kind of impact, and then also looking at what kind of measures could be taken, how much investment is needed relative to the impact, and so on. These are the academic questions that we want to answer, and for that we have been working with the partners in Uganda and in Vietnam, training PhDs, students such as John, having several students doing master theses, both in Belgium and in the countries of the project. And in general, we have built up capacities to work with citizen science. The general focus is the concept of geo-observers, so local citizens that can observe their environments and report on what's happening. And this strategy has been developed from the start continuously with local stakeholders in constant discussions with local districts and with the communities at risk, with the overall objective being to come up with findings and recommendations through which the local population and stakeholders can better prepare and limit the impact of these events. And so, as I've already mentioned, we are dealing, when we talk about risk management, with three types of people or communities. We have the people at risk, the communities we want to help. Then we have policymakers, risk managers, people at district up to national levels that are developing the schemes, the policies, but also implementing the investment to reduce the risk. And then we have academic researchers, local researchers, international researchers that are doing fundamental research to try to understand often just the hazards. More and more people are integrating their research into a full risk assessment. And the idea is of our project and of our concept of geo-observers is to have local citizens being involved in the research and making the link between these different types of actors, which are often disconnected, using different language, having different specific objectives. We have started this idea in 2017 in Western Uganda in the Rwenzori Mountains, which is a very high mountains, and in the lower area at the base of the mountains, we have a very high density of population. And then later on, because this was quite successful, we have extended the idea and we have moved up to Vietnam, where we have started last year to work in the Dabac district in northern Vietnam, not far from Hanoi. And recently we have been asked also by the Belgian embassy in Vietnam to extend our approach to some provinces in central Vietnam that were severely hit by the typhoon seasons in 2020. But I won't say much more than that. I'd like John and Dinh to explain how this has been implemented in their own country. So maybe John, you want to tell us how you have established the Citizen Science Network in Western Uganda together with people from Mbarara University of Science and Technology, and the partners of Mountain of the Moon University.
Right. Thank you, Matthew. Just maybe to re-emphasize to our listeners, they have to understand this network that we are calling the GeoBserver network is composed of local people who are highly determined and self-motivated. So you don't have anybody in the field to push them, to supervise them, or tell them, go and report here. So they decide when and where to go. So then how do you identify such very self-motivated but trustworthy people in the field? First, we went to the people, the key stakeholders, the local leaders, the CBOs and the NGOs that are in those target areas, and then engaged them to make them appreciate and understand the citizen approach that we are trying to sell to them. And after that, we requested them to identify these trustable but self-motivated people that can volunteer to record and report hazards that occur in their localities. So after giving us these men and women, we train them on how to identify and report different hazards in their localities using the smartphone technology. So here now you understand our target was not to get the highly educated people, but people with just the basic skills to use a mobile phone after being trained. So we got up to 30 citizen scientists in the Rwenzori region who were trained in the field on how to identify and report hazards. So on the screen, see they go to the field when they get a signal from the local people or on their own, understand that a landslide has happened or a hazard, and then they record the information into the Kobo app that is installed on their mobile phones. And then they submit the recorded information to our central database that is at the university. And at the university, we have a full-time research assistant that is able to quickly check on the information that is sent in, and if needed, quickly reach out to the GeoBservers to double check the information sent and correct mistakes where necessary. And so that's how it works, and that's how we have been working in Uganda. Maybe over
Thanks,
to
John. Maybe I propose we look at the testimony of one of these geo-observers that we have on a video. I will try to share that here.
Oh, yes.
I hope you can all see the videos. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have this smartphone.
Yes.
Yes. When you go to the field, when you get an hazard such as like a flood or a drought, you first put on a location that will help you to take the GPS. So you go to the Cob Collect tool, then you tap in, it says that fill the blank space, the blank form. You go there. Then after, it comes that you enter the number, the ID of the phone. You put it there. Then it asks you the village, the name of the village. Then you continue. You come at the end. They say save the finalized form. So you send. You check through whether the information that they have been giving you, it is correct. Then after, you can send it after loading, after putting data.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's an explanation by the locals. Let's move back to the presentation here. Dinh, maybe you want to explain how you have established that in Vietnam?
Yes, we are as a natural scientist, and we are quite new to the citizen science at the beginning of the project, actually. So the experience brought from the former project of Professor Kevin helped us to establish the citizen science in our group. So we also follow the protocol to choose the self-motivate people from the community In our region, we have the eco-tourist company and the homestay people. They are very active in the community activity. So most of the geo observer in our group come from the eco-tourist company. So at the moment, we can manage to develop and train the network of citizen science to collect the data systematically and report data to our project. So, and we also have the regular trainings and the contact through the social media, for example, Facebook fan page and also the Zalo group. So the network of geo observers also plays as a volunteer in the local disaster risk management system, and they also follow the protocol to collect the data of landslide in the place they are living, and they update the hazard inventory damage to our server system, and we collect the data for analysis.
Okay, thank you. I think something we can mention is that because the context in Vietnam is different, the local geo observers have their own smartphones and they're able to also work without any facilitations from the project. Maybe if we move on, John, what would you consider to be the added value of citizen science compared to other things you could do with your own fieldwork?
Thank you. Good question. Like you mentioned at the beginning that in Uganda, especially, generally in the Global South, but particularly in Uganda, where I'm working, we are faced with mostly these small but frequent hazards, especially landslides and floods or droughts, that will not have a huge impact at once to attract media attention or maybe meet the thresholds of national and international databases to be recorded, but gradually cause significant impact on the livelihoods of the people. So with the GeoBserve network, you are able to record such events and quote them for future, for detailed analysis and involving risk reduction strategies. But also you do not get only the locations of these events, you also get the impacts recorded on spot. I just want you as listeners to imagine if you were to do this on your own as a researcher, you're understanding that the region is highly humid. By the time you organize yourselves and the logistics to get the field, probably all these landslides have already grown. As you can see, it's already in the picture. They have already grown, or probably people have already cultivated these lands, and then you are not able to get the real feel of what happened. So with the Citizen Science Network, you are able to get this kind of information. But also, on the other hand, these people are not really driven by high monthly or monthly payments. They are really volunteers, as we have said. The only thing we do as a project is really to give them like compensation for transport. Understand that all these areas are highly, they are highlands. So then you are able to get a very huge high quality database, but with very minimum costs in terms of payment. So maybe, yeah, if we go to Dinh to see what.
Yeah, indeed, maybe we can look at Dinh. I think what we see on this slide is also interesting to see that geo observers, after working some years for the project, they consider that they really get a specific role as within their communities. They can report what happened in their community. They can also learn about their environments, and they're willing to know more about how to protect them.
Yeah, exactly. As you say, they feel more happy when they are recognized in their communities as having made a contribution towards risk reduction, but also reporting and advising their communities. To them, that one is very more important than the monetary gains they would get from the project.
Okay, thanks. Dinh, do you have the same experience in Vietnam?
Yes, I found that the approach of citizen science has manifold added value for our project. At the first place, it brings new means, new methods for collecting, updating the valuable data. that is not always available to our researcher. For example, especially during the disaster event, it's hard to collect the data, but the people living there, they can easily to collect the data for us. The secondly is the actively engagement of the citizen science network. Is a key to community-based disaster risk reduction. They are the kernels to the local network, participating voluntarily to the network and transform themselves to the scientists. And the citizen science concepts also bring in such a strong bond between researchers and local people. And we are, as researchers, are informed the needs of the local people and can directly translate it, the result of our research into the practice of the networks, as also the disaster risk manager at the province. We have frequently have the contact with the local people, with the network, and also with the disaster risk manager of the region, of the community, through the networks.
Okay, thanks. So, and it seems that the people at the province and the district, they're quite interested with this approach.
Yes. For example, in the slide, the man in the red shirt, he is responsible for the disaster management for the Hòa Bình province. And the other people in the left-hand side, they are responsible for the disaster risk management at the district scale, district level, and they are in the meeting with the geo observer in our group.
Okay, thanks. But of course, this citizen science approach, it's not ideal for everything, and there may be challenges with it. Dinh, do you want to tell us about what challenge you have experienced so far in trying to implement that in your study area?
Yes, as I said at the beginning, we are newbie to the citizen science, and we have quite many challenges at the beginning. And we always learn from doing, and we always learn from the challenges as well. The first one is our researcher has a difficulty at the beginning to work with the local people. They learn very fast to translate the scientific languages to the same language as the local people. It's very important that we are talking in the same languages. And the second one is the retention of the geo observer, because the local people, they often move to the city for the new job, for the better job. So we have to recruit the geo observer again and retrain them and retrain them to use the software and report the data. Last year in 2020, we start the project, and it's the year is quite a small number of reports due to the low rainfall, extremely low rainfall at the area, and it's also caused the less alert of the local people to the disaster event. The last but not least, the impact of COVID-19 also a very big problem for us. We cannot access to the site, and the field access is very limited. So most of the time we connect with the local people, with the geo observer through the social network, and through the virtual meeting.
Okay, but actually maybe having in place the network
I have difficulty with the internet connection.
John, do you face the same type of challenge in Uganda?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, some of them, especially like, for example, having some youth probably shifting from one parish to another or from the village to rural and maybe changing job is one of the challenges we get. But also more from that is also the ability for the network to maintain gender balance, because we often get it as a concern from different stakeholders where we find the network dominated by males. Because at the beginning you recruit very many ladies, but continuously many went on dropping out, partly due to maybe family issues, also maybe due to the terrain that maybe they find it not so to quickly move through the hills, but also the network discontinuing them because of lack of reporting. So that has been one of the challenges. And the other is that we are working in a highly remote environment where there is no a good electricity connection. So quite often, observers depend on solar in the communities, and we have had most of our phone batteries deteriorating quite very fast, and you have to replace these gadgets quite frequently. And then the observers being continuously organizing the communities, many other development partners get interested in them. And then you have these partners probably giving big compensations from what we give, and that sometimes creating motivations among the stakeholders. And just away from that, you still see the observers continuously getting interested in doing more than just reporting. They make requests, they have proposals and projects to do other things, participate in restoration activities in their communities, and sometimes we find it's more above the project capacity to give them support, although we would want to do that. And in terms of data, yes, we have seen they give good quality data, but we cannot say that this data is completely free from biases. We have seen it's also, there's also potential for biases, especially depending on how a observer is connected in the community, the social network, but also depending on how far the landslide or the hazard has happened from the GeoBserver homestead and the road network. A GeoBserver may not get the information that a landslide has happened, and you may have some of the events being missed or taking long to report some of the events. So the potential for spatial temporal biases is also there in the GeoBserver network. We cannot rule it out. So those are some of the challenges we face with the network.
I might add another challenge that we also face in Vietnam, because the task of collecting data is volunteer, so that the local geo-observer, they often have more important things to care about, so that sometimes we have to, how can I say, to remind them before the weather event and after the weather event, so that they can help us to collect the data.
Okay, so if you get a signal of something that has happened, you quickly signal them and say, okay, this has happened here, and maybe they are able to quickly go there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think this reporting bias that John, you're mentioning, it's very important. It's not that the data is not usable, but we have to be aware that it's might not be fully consistent. And,
exactly.
Because that's also part of the research topics.
Because at least we are sure they know what a landslide is, they know how to detect very well, they know when to report and how to report it, but maybe probably we have to know that it may not be complete or may not be covering everything that is happening in the area.
Okay, but despite these challenges, there are quite interesting perspective in the citizen science already in the project that we are doing, but also for future developments. Dinh, what do you have in mind for the future?
I think that with the development of science technology, especially in IT technology, and the smartphone application is quite popular now. The citizen science will have huge potential in the coming years. For example, this is a very effective ways, and it's a two-way of interaction between the scientists and to the local people as well. And because of the potential of the citizen science, we are going to extend our concept to the south of Vietnam, to the central of Vietnam in Cha My district of Quảng Nam province, where we have the disaster last year during the rainy season in 2020, as Professor Kevin mentioned in the beginning. And the second one is with the citizen science, we can have a variety of application. For example, disaster risk reduction, as we have it here. We have it in agriculture, in forestry, oceanography, and also in environmental science. One of our other project, we use a citizen science approach for plastic waste reporting. So you know that reporting plastic waste is also tremendous works. So it is need the help of the citizen through this citizen science concept. And the citizen science concept also have to help us after the disaster for build back better for the society. For example, collecting the data, who, where, who's missing, and where's damage happened. Yeah, I see the huge potential of citizen science.
Okay, so citizen science is more an approach that you can apply to multiple projects and issues.
Yeah.
What about you, John? This has been going on for several years in Uganda. Do you think that is gonna keep going, or do you see new development?
Yeah, for us, we see this network giving the potential for for these key observers to act as future environmental facilitators in their communities. And we think if their capacity can be built further, they could act as change agents in their communities for sustainable use of the environmental resources, and maybe promoting good agronomic practices in their localities. But also we are on the other hand saddened a bit because we know our project, so the project is coming to the end soon next year. And now the concern is about how to sustain this network that we have been working with since 2017. And however, we see also more opportunities coming in, especially now the VIC project that is based at a MUST, or Mbara University of Science and Technology, that is also embracing citizen science approach. So we hope this will perpetuate the network more. But also we have started engaging with different stakeholders at different levels to discuss on how we can best sustain the citizen science approach in Uganda. And one of the options coming is to really make this network, formally be established as a community-based organizations so that they can be anchored within the formal structures of government. So they see citizen science are also coming up with different proposals, building their capacity and training to develop their own projects. And of course, we are trying out modalities on how they can become independent in terms of work, but also remain relevant to us, the academic institutions. So we are looking forward to future projects and the other partners embracing the citizen science approach, and we hope it's the way to go in Uganda, and we don't think it's yet to end soon.
Thank you, John. That's a great conclusion. So indeed, from my point of view also, citizen science approach is not only a way to generate new data at a very fine spatial and temporal scale, but it's also a great way to have a stronger bonds with the local community, to see what kind of issues and concerns they have and how they want to tackle it. And it has shown to really be a great way to interact and try to evolve towards having a real impact with the research. So in conclusions, I'd like to thank all the partners first of all these geo-observers that have dedicated time and energy to this project, also the authorities and risk managers we have interacted with from village to district to national level in Uganda and in Vietnam, to the Belgium embassies in these countries that have been very supportive. and then all the partners in the different institutions that you see here on screens, because this is not only Dr. Dinh, John, and myself, but we are more than 15 people involved in this project in these different institutions. So thank you for your attention, and if those of you have interest for especially the Citizen Science Network in Uganda, not only our project, but other initiative also from colleagues of the KU Leuven, there is a website that is proposing more information and also some previews of the available data.
Thank you very much, colleagues, John, Mathieu, and Dinh. This was a very interesting presentation. Thank you very much for that. I would also like to thank the audience, because they were very quiet. Sometimes people come in, you know, and then you hear children crying or animal dogs barking. So this was not the case. So this was a very clean presentation. So thank you for that. I suggested at the start to post your questions. There weren't that many questions, but there was one person who was very active. That's Luesagat Bunare. Maybe Bunare, you can take the floor here, and you can ask your questions directly to the people of this presentation. Luesagat Bunare. Maybe I can already read it, because apparently it was sent to me directly. So, do reporting the hazards by geo observers ends when the term of project ends. That means, is there any way to connect with other project academia in order to collect data in a sustainable manner? So yeah, I think this yeah, the sustainability, of course. So what after the project? It was already mentioned actually in some way, but if you want to reply to it, colleagues, please.
Yes, I think it's a very important question, and we've been thinking and struggling with it. It also depends how the citizen science network is established. For example, in Vietnam, we have tried systems where it's a full volunteering system. So it's the volunteers, they come with their own material, so their own smartphone. All they get from the project is training and regular contacts and regular training, but they are also not facilitated in any way. So there is no compensation, which is much more sustainable, but we are yet to demonstrate that it is also sufficient to have a clear engagement of all these volunteers to stay on board. In Uganda, it's a different context. The project have to provide the smartphones, because this is not a technology that is yet widely available in the country. And we also provide a small monthly compensation for transport. So these things, although they are small in budget terms, they might represent an issue for sustainability. And that's why we have been discussing with the geo-observers that are willing to organize themselves in what they call community-based organization, so that there would be an official organization outside the project, and they would be eligible for support by the local districts or by other donors after the project ends. I don't know if, John, if you want to comment on that. John, you're muted.
Okay. I was saying you really explained it very well, and I don't want to add the many things on it, except maybe to tackle other questions that I see in the chat.
Okay.
From Vietnam, as Professor Kevin already explained, so the geo observer, they are working on a volunteer base, and at the sites we also have several projects in parallel. For example, our local promoter, Dr. Vũ Kim Chi, she's also take part in our meeting today. She can explain more about the project that she's running in the area. So with the activities of other projects, we are also promoting the eco tours in the area to help people to find the sustainable ways of living and sustainable ways of earning money. So that I think that in our case, the sustainability is quite clear that we keep the network beyond the projects, beyond the end of projects, and we already established the Facebook fan page and the Facebook group that we can communicate like in daily base or in the base of the disaster event. For example, before the storm, after storm, we always contact them to remind them to be careful or to ask if there is any event of a disaster. So that I think that a strong linkage and strong bond between our group and the geo observer network in the area already established.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, maybe Christopher, I've seen two interesting questions in the chat. Can I respond maybe to some of them? I can introduce them. I've seen Santo Aliesinago asking, is it possible to integrate the COBO hazard reporting technology to risk alerts and to alert vulnerabilities? Yes, and for our case, we have how we have been doing it. Normally, when we get these reports coming in quickly, and we on their basis quickly check them, and when we see huge impacts and or risks, we have established a mechanism where we quickly send messages to the district people, to the CAOs, to the environment officers, to say, look, this is what is happening in these particular areas, and we think there's need to really pay attention and maybe engage people. So we have been doing those alerts, although, yeah, in future project we could maybe automate it and integrate it with warning systems. So that is very possible and provides a good opportunity.
Maybe John, I think that what you're saying is true. We are alerting on the fact that some events have happened. It's not really meant to be an early warning system. Yeah. So it's not that we tell people in advance that something is coming up. On the other hand, the GeoObserver network, they are there and they can be provided with information, not through the COBO tool, but through SMS and so on, where at the moment we have a PhD researcher who is looking at how to provide environmental information about disaster risk reduction. But also when the meteorological service are issuing some warnings, then we can help to disseminate it also through this way.
Yeah, and we are looking at a more local level where the observer, when we train them and when they are moving, they have been able to understand what would be the signs. Like, for example, landside, we see a huge crack somewhere. They're able to tell the people that you see in your garden or just beside your house, you have this huge crack and it is potential for landslides, and they are able to be more vigilant than before. And then maybe another question I've seen is from Monica Asiru, who have said, have there been opportunities for involving the Ministry for Disaster Preparedness? Yes, from the beginning, even at the start of our projects and the data we use, we have been quite interacting with the different stakeholders, including the Ministry, the Office of the Prime Minister, and many times also a framework has been developed on how we can share the data. But we, as a project, we have been workshops and meetings and engagements with the different ministries. Matthew, do you have anything else to explain that?
No, indeed. We can report that, for example, in February 2018, we did quite a large conference in Kampala where the Minister for Disaster Management was present. And we also, together with other universities in Uganda, demonstrated different research activities, and the GeoObserver was part of that. And since then, we have indeed developed some data sharing agreements and MOUs with some of these partners.
Yeah, and at Locative, quite often, quarterly, we make reports of the events, and the district disaster management committees are informed, are given reports, and we assume all these district disaster management committees are directly linked to the ministries that established them.
Thank you very much, all of you. Maybe Mathieu, may I ask you to stop sharing the screen so that we have a better overview, the audience. That's nicer. Mr. Bosco Bombale, you had a question for a long time already. So please unmute yourself and ask a question, please.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Mine is it's just a comment. I have been partly interacting with the citizen science in Uganda, and I am a PhD student under the group of Matthew here at the VUB, trying to finalize my PhD, but working in the area of the role of indigenous knowledge in understanding and tackling disasters from natural hazards, although I focus more on floods. So I see real citizen science approach being quite significant for reporting hazards. And now that we look forward to looking at citizen scientists as reporters or even helping in education with regard to how best to reduce hazards, taking the message home back to their communities. And we already have a kind of a divide in literature. It's well kind of known that scientists recommend some interventions that are actually not taken up by communities at risk. So the question in this is how, like, the information that will be taken by citizen scientists considers this divide between science, practice, and policy to make sure that actually we don't repeat the same mistakes, like having recommendations that are actually not taken up. So I think maybe in the citizen science approach, like evolving them in the reporting data and then taking back what has been analyzed by scientists, maybe an incorporation of what communities think about reducing this should also be reported, so that when we report back, there is some close link between the science we produce through citizen science and actually what the community believes that could work, something like that. So like an incorporation of what, not reporting what has happened, how many people have been affected by a landslide or a flood, and then we analyze and we make recommendations, but also finding out what, in the perspective of the affected community, what is best, what they think. So try to include their perspectives, their views, their indigenous kind of knowledge into the analysis. And I think that would help in trying to solve the divide between science and practice, and then science and policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bombela. Anyone wants to add to this, or?
I've just seen, Christopher, one comment, proposal from one of the participants, Sarah Akaboksi. As just said, she's working with the rural women in Western Uganda, and the who are involved in the village savings and the schemes. And she thinks in their communities there are many climate hazards, and these could be very good observers, these women. And I think this is very interesting. We have a same approach in that particular area, the southwestern part of Uganda, which is conducted at Mbarara University of Science and Technology. And I've seen Professor Grace Kagoro, who is heading this, or also part of the participants. I think she has taken note of this, and we should do probably in future engagements where we need more observers. We could tap into these women who are active already in these areas to act as observers.
Excellent, thank you very much. I also like the question of John William Okela. How frequent do you collect this data and share? It's a simple question, but I like it.
So how frequent we collect? So the geo-observers, the citizens, they are free to document an event whenever they happen. So the events they report, they come in at any time. We definitely see a clear signal, for example, of the rain season. So in Uganda, for example, in April, May, or in October, we have more reports. But for example, last week there was quite an abnormal event with several floods affecting the Kasese district in the middle of July, and we received several reports, and we directly didn't get in touch with the district. And then, as John has mentioned, we have agreed that at least every 6 months we make a summary of all the reports and we report back to the district. But when there are large events, we also then interact on a more ad hoc basis with the district that are affected.
Okay, thank you very much.
Maybe I see that
Yeah.
Rogers Mutiabere wants to have the floor. It's also someone involved in the project.
Thank you so much, Matthew, and all the presenters. I'm also Rogers Mutiabere from KLUV and also attached to the Citizen Science project in Uganda. And I'm a PhD student, mainly like Bosco Wambale has mentioned, that there's a lot of research which has been done, especially on the recommendations from science, but which mostly do not turn into practice. So my PhD mainly does concerns, it's not just a vertical flow of information from the communities to the universities, but we're now testing how best these geo-observers can improve the knowledge transfer within the farming communities in terms of improving the agronomic practices. And also we have an element of how these geo-observers can improve the network within the farming communities. So it's very, very important that the uptake of these recommendations at farm level requires a lot of network effect. So mainly we are setting an experiment, a randomized controlled trial, to test how these geo-observers compared to the conventional extension workers who have been working from government can be able to promote the network and then compare the two, and then we are able to make a concrete recommendation on how they can be incorporated into policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also see that Monica Asiro has raised her hand. Please, Monica, take the floor.
Yes, can you hear me?
Very well, thank you.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you for the interesting presentation. And I just have a follow-up comment / question. Given that these are it seems they are organized around PhD programs, which usually are short, have a specific time frame, 4 years, 5 years. And it's quite interesting that it's trying to integrate both theory and practice within this whole tool by involving the local communities and local institutions in these data collection processes. But my question is more into the sustainability of this tool and approach. What happens when the PhD students are done with their research? John already mentioned that that's something that's a challenge in Uganda, where he's coming to the end of his project. So what will these programs continue within the local communities, the reporting? A follow-up to my question I put in the chat, will there be a sort of continuation with the local governments, with the ministries, to keep these reporting tools working even after the conclusion of these time-specific PhD programs that these tools are being implemented using?
Yes, thank you very much, Monica. I propose to answer this. I think the question is twofold. On the one hand, we are training academic researchers. So we are providing new capacities for doing research, including with citizen science. And this is indeed mostly through PhDs, but we are interacting with entire departments, with entire institutions. And so it's not only 1 or 2 people being trained, but we really try to extend the capacities locally. And of course, we expect the trained PhDs to continue supporting their home institutions and continue to develop this type of activities beyond their PhD. So, and we definitely see that this capacity and interest to use these methods is extending way beyond the few people that are being funded for research. So that's on the academic level. Indeed, on the more practical level of the citizen science, we have already addressed that. Depending on the context, in some contexts it's a fully voluntary system, and so we try to invest on maintaining this community feeling that the geo-observers are regularly contacted either digitally or through training on the field, so that these emulations between these geo-observers is maintained. In other contexts, like in Uganda, where some facilitation is required, this is a bit more challenging, and we will be testing also for other type of projects. We are discussing with Professor Kagoro for Mbarara University how this could involve farmers, which do not have to move, but to report what happens in their own farm and so on. That could be other approach to help the sustainability. I see other questions related to data availability, but also to capacity of mapping and using that to look at the likelihood of disaster. So I'll try to answer this important question. In terms of data availability, the website from Citizen Science Uganda is displaying a few data from the first year of the project. The goal is not to have a real-time online provision of all the data, and there are good reasons for that. Is that first, we need to validate the report as they are coming in, but also the geo-observers, they cover limited area, and we want to avoid to give the wrong feeling that areas where no report is being received have no events. It's just that not all the geographical area in the province that we are working on is being covered. So we prefer to be sharing data with specific institutions. We have developed data sharing agreement with that, in which we explain clearly what is in the data, what it can be used for, but also what caution has to be done. So if you have interest to access the data, please contact us. It can be done also through that website, and we will make sure to share the required data. In terms of mapping, definitely these reports are being mapped. They are very precisely located with GPS that you all have on your smartphone. And so we do produce maps. So when we report to districts, often these reports are containing some maps. But if there is needs to provide more detailed mapping, we can do that as well. The PhD of John, for example, is partly related to the spatial analysis. And indeed, then for us as scientists, one of the goals is to use these reports to better understand what is controlling where and when these events happen, how they are clustered in time, in space. And so definitely this is currently being used to look at the distributions, for example, of landslides. We have already done quite some work, for example, by Lise Jacobs, where she was doing the fieldwork, but now we have this report of geo-observers to complement that. And for example, another types of hazards they have are flash floods, and there is probably still a lot of work that can be done thanks to the report of geo-observers.
To the question of Liu Segat Bunner, do the geo-observer report the events or issue related to cause impact? Yes, the geo-observer, they report events where and when happen, and also the roughly the impact of the event, for example, the loss of life and infrastructure, properties, but the software, the apps is quite simple to use, so it takes only half an hour to learn how to report it. And the data will be used for our further analysis for landslide vulnerability mapping to predict the future likelihood of disaster occurrence. Is the answer to the Isaac's Orteo. Okay.
Yeah, and indeed they include also the land use, like the land use before the landslide. So we have all that information recorded in that impact and what was there, if it's a crop or if it's a forest. So we have a feel what was really on the land before the landslide. Sweet.
I still see. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Mathieu. Yeah, I think it's 11.
Yes, indeed.
It's 11.
Yeah.
So this hour passed very quickly. Thank you very much. This was very interesting information. Actually, I posted the links to the projects in the chat. So if there are any people who are still interested, who have extra questions for our presenters, please contact those people personally. I'm sure they will be happy to share more ideas with you.
Yes, for sure.
Actually, on the sustainability, I also would like to raise a few elements. You know that VIGMR, it's about pilots actually. It's about development cooperation. So we are trying, and we are hoping that by when the project is finished, is finalized, that other partners will pick up these ideas and develop them further where we stopped actually. So that's why it's very important for us to also stay in touch with NGOs, with ministries. Actually, I was very happy to learn, for example, Dinh touched upon it, that an initial project was picked up by the embassy, and then we were asked to broaden it up to the center of the country as well. So these are examples of possible sustainability, of course. But there's still a lot of work to do. But I must say, thank you very much for all the support that we're getting from our colleagues, from the academics. And this is it. We have passed 1 hour now. We have been discussing for 1 hour. I would like to thank the entire audience. Thank you very much. We'll be back in a month. Towards the end of August, we will go to Ecuador this time, where we will go into the forest development. And we invite you again to these community talks that are organized on a monthly basis. And please hope to see you again in the next community talk towards the end of August. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
See
very
you
much.
all.
See you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, everyone.